Good morning everyone, welcome to another live at the waterhole session on this fine Sunday. It's me, Kenneth Gamble. I'll be your guide for the session. We are starting off with a bang here at El Doño. We've got 1 ton here with us, so that is fantastic. Nice bit of action. I have not seen him in many moons, so I'm quite excited to see him. Just a reminder to everyone, the show is live and interactive, so please send through your questions or comments to the various channels and I'll do my best to answer them. Such a nice surprise to see 1 ton here. I do think today on the show most of our activity will be limited to around the East African cameras, or maybe the western part of South Africa. Unfortunately, the Kruger region has experienced some incredibly devastating floods. It's been quite a week for all of us in this section of the Lowveld. Certainly has made things entertaining. Quite interesting to see how close this other bull elephant is with 1 ton. Obviously they've known each other for quite a long time, or they're quite closely associated. Probably say it's one of 1 ton's good friends. Many older bulls often have their younger bulls that hang around and look after them. I say look after them in inverted commas, but obviously these two have got a close-knit relationship to an extent, I'm sure. James Hotham, welcome, good morning to you. You say you're multitasking that side. Well, that is the beauty of live at the waterhole. It's great for setting the relaxing tone in the background and keeping things peaceful on a Sunday. Willow, you were asking, can an elephant actually be scared away or deterred by something as tiny as bees or ants? So I don't know about ants, but definitely yes on the bee side of things. I think maybe ants could deter them as well. But so in the greater Kruger region, with a growing elephant population and a concern to large mature trees being damaged or pushed over, like marulas, etc., which other large birds rely on for nesting, a lot of research was done to see how we could protect these trees. So initially they put wires around the trees to try to stop ring barking, etc., or barriers. The barriers work quite effectively, and but yeah, this is quite I would say invasive and a lot of hard work. I mean, to put barriers around every single tree in a region as big as the Kruger is quite challenging. But they saw by hanging beehives in trees that these beehives then deterred elephants from spending too much time, or I would say feeding on these trees, because when they started to disturb the tree, the bees would start to react defensively and chase off the elephants or deter the elephants. So yeah, very interesting phenomenon that's taking place, and I think very cool research that has led to quite a efficient way of protecting large trees from sometimes the destructive habits of elephants. I see a couple more people hopping on. Ollie Thiop and Jive Bunny, good to see you, good morning. Right, this is certainly a nice treat to have one ton gracing us with his presence. Dex, you were asking if elephants can jump. No, they cannot. It's an interesting limiting factor, but elephants cannot jump. In Glover Julius, you were asking if elephants have teeth or only tusks. So elephants do have both. They've got their tusks, as we can clearly see here, but then of course they have their teeth are molars. Elephants don't have canines or incisors. It's an adaptation with their trunk, etc. Their trunk does a lot of the browsing work or collecting grass and branches, etc. And then their molars grind up all the vegetation that they eat. They have a number of molars throughout their life, and that's generally when elephants pass away at an old age, is when their molars run out and they lose condition and eventually starve to death, sadly. But it takes about 60 years for them to essentially run out of teeth. Tinus Diedrichs, you're asking if 1 ton is what they would call a tusker. Yes, definitely so. He is a textbook definition or example of what a tusker looks like. When the tusks start to look like that, then that's what gets him into that Hall of Fame, or that mythical title. Jacinta, you were asking how is it possible for elephants to push over trees just with their trunks. So it's not necessarily just their trunk. Of course they can use their trunk to pull branches or trees, etc. But generally when we see them pushing over trees, it's a lot to do with their forehead. And they push up against with that, but of course it's due to the immense strength and power that elephants possess. Obviously they're incredibly big animals and incredibly powerful. Even their trunks are made up of many thousands of muscles, so that in itself obviously it's an incredibly powerful prehensile tool. But yeah, so when an elephant wants to push over a tree, it puts its forehead up against it and will start pushing and maybe rocking a bit and keep going until it pushes the tree over. It's quite an immense and difficult to believe feat of strength, but they are incredibly powerful animals. That you were asking why is it that some elephants have so much bigger and longer tusks than others. It's purely down to genetics. Some bull elephants possess these genes to have bigger and longer tusks, and some of your other elephants just don't have these genes. Sometimes there's tuskless elephants, etc. And we've got a helicopter coming past. I'm sure they're busy with some operation in the area. But yeah, some elephants' genes are just more or have better genes for growing larger tusks. On that point, Minnie's got a follow-up question. why have some elephant populations evolved to become tuskless? So this is an example of, I would maybe call it natural, not really natural selection, but artificial selection in a way. But because the way that in lots of parts of Africa or wild areas there's been poaching or civil wars, tuskless elephants already tend or naturally exist in a population. But now you have people trying to poach elephants for ivory, and of course they are always going to try poach the elephants with ivory. So individuals with smaller ivory or no ivory essentially are left alone or not poached or killed, and in that way those genes start to be passed on, and it carries on along in the population. And that is why you will have some tuskless elephants in certain populations or areas of Africa. So for example, the elephants in the Eastern Cape, or the Addo elephants, they are largely tuskless, but they did introduce elephants from Kruger to diversify the gene pool a bit. But for example, in Mozambique, due to the civil war that took place for a number of years there, a lot of elephants there are actually tuskless, even the bulls. Normally it's more prevalent in cows. So yeah, it's due to artificial causes. It's not normal, and it's not the end of the world for elephants. They are able to survive and cope quite fine without their tusks. But it is still quite a sad phenomenon. Anyway, we're going to leave one ton for a little bit. I'm sure we'll come back later. We're going to pop on over to Founders. Oh, there we go. Got what looks to be a sable. Now, I was expecting to see many rhinos, but I think it's looking a bit cold and unpleasant here at the moment. So the rhinos are probably hunkering down or sleeping somewhere out of the wind, I'm sure. Robin Mack, you were asking if one ton is looking more sunken in his temples. He certainly does, I did notice that. It is generally something you start to see with age in bull elephants. Their temples start to sink in heavily. This appears to be a sable cow. I'm sure she's not necessarily on her own, but we can't see the rest of the herd here. Mara, you were saying thank you for the awesome work everyone does, and praying that all animals and staff are safe in the Kruger. Of course, the animals are more than safe. They are adapted to deal with conditions like this. They can sense the floods coming, and of course there's a lot of places for them to seek shelter, higher ground, etc. They instinctively know to move away from rivers or low-lying areas, and of course, being free roaming, they can reach these areas or spots. It's us humans that tend to struggle a bit more during the floods in Kruger, since a lot of our roads bisect rivers, etc. Or all the camps are often in low-lying areas or near rivers, so that causes the damage we're seeing. But at the same time, I think Sand Parks has done an incredible job of managing this disaster, or natural disaster that's come through, and they were very proactive and monitored the situation very carefully and evacuated people before any of the floods properly arrived or were ready to scramble emergency services. So it seems like everyone's been well looked after. Well, our sable has left us now. We're going to head on over to Serengeti. The good old Spider-Man lizard, looking a bit dull today, not necessarily in his full fighting colours. Of course they can slightly change the hue of their coloration depending on a number of factors. I don't know if it's because I'm just staring at him too long, but it almost looks like his colours are changing a little bit, but I think maybe I'm staring a bit too focusedly. I think you're asking if they're blue colors, are their blue colors true colors? Yeah, so obviously the natural coloration is that bright red and, or maybe crimson, you could call it that, and the blue. This depends on a number of features. So the dominance of the lizard, if he's quite a dominant male in the area in his territory, he uses that to advertise to females, etc. So if it's a subdominant male, his colors will be a lot more dulled down, because he's not trying to be dominant or get into a fight with a dominant male. So temperature, etc. plays a role as they regulate them. It actually looks like this lizard is possibly thermoregulating a bit here. Obviously he's been basking on this rock, and I assume he's getting quite warm, so I think that's why he's standing almost in a push-up position in a way, just to try remove his body away from the surface of the rock, maybe to just regulate his body temperature a bit more and stop himself from overheating. Shelley, you were asking why do male agamas perform push-up and head bobbing display. So it's a territorial or dominance display. They use it to attract the attention of females and also just show their strength and their size, etc. So it's a bit of a, there's a word I'm looking for, but anyway, it's a physical display that they use to show off their strength and prowess, and that's why we often see it in the males as they do that, to size each other up and display their power. Yaku, who's 11, you'd like to know if any lizard species have teeth. So they do. In most lizards they're this small and sharp, tiny teeth, so we don't really see them, or it appears like they are toothless. But if you think about it, your Komodo dragons have very prominent sharp teeth, or serrated teeth, so we just don't really notice it so much in the smaller lizards, but they all do have teeth. And if you wanted to maybe really use an extreme example, crocodiles are, well, they're not necessarily lizards, but they've also got quite well designed teeth. Anyway, just popping over here to Tembe, since our agama has done the disappearing act on us. We've got some zebras. It's actually not something we see very often. I think it's my first time seeing the zebras here at the Tembe camp. They don't normally hang around in this part of the reserve. It's in quite a thick sand forest part of the reserve, so hence why we don't often see them here. I'm wondering if it's just this female and the foal that are maybe here on their own. Of course, a slightly brave decision. The lions do tend to hang around this pan quite a bit. You don't often see them, but they are normally not too far away from this pan. But they are looking rather content and relaxed.
Let's go and take a look. See you out there.
Do you want to know why impala are the most common antelope we find here in the Kruger National Park? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live. Connect with nature.
Wow, that's amazing, everybody.
We'll see you there.
Oh, have a look at this.
Wow, wow, wow.
I don't know where to look. This is too astounding for words.
Unreal.
This is what they call a shambi, a family, a whole herd of elephants.
Nature is just everything.
We will be extending the show by a few minutes.
A fascinating animal that kind of draws people to it.
We'll see you out on the safari.
Dry. And if I think about how things are, well, it was already quite green in southern Africa, but now with this heavy rain it's going to get even greener, and I think it will stay green for quite a while. The soil is so saturated with water at the moment. Got another giraffe sneaking in from the bottom here. It seems like there's a herd in the area. Really amazed with how dry it looks. We were here, I assume sometime in December, and it really looked quite green, so obviously it's been a bit dry the last while. All the rains have not been very prevalent in the area. But certainly the habitat or the surrounding area is looking a bit parched. It could do with a bit of rain, I'm sure. I think what's so striking is I think the last time I was at this camera was a bit more in December, and we saw blue-cheeked bee-eater here, and generally that's a bee-eater that associates closely with wetter habitats or environments, and to see how dry it is certainly striking. Of course, with the wetland at this location, that can also be a reason why the bee-eaters were associating here, but certainly a stark contrast. Rosalind, you were asking how low is a giraffe's ankle joint. So their ankles are right above their hooves there. As in many other antelopes, the ankles are just above their hooves. Or quite similar to a horse, maybe, if you want to compare it with that one. Lola, you're asking if giraffe calves have tiny hooves at birth. Yes, when they are born they are quite fully developed, or they are fully developed. It's also a reason why the gestation would take quite long, because when the calf is eventually born it needs to be developed enough to function. This giraffe is certainly looking quite alert. Certainly some interesting colours here in this wetland. Ooh, there's quite a few birds there. It looks like a spoonbill. It appears to be an egret. Also a sacred ibis, I think I can see over there. It's always the joys of birding in a wetland or water habitat. At first it doesn't seem like there's much going on, but as you start to look carefully, you start to pick up on all the different bird species at work. Yeah, definitely a spoonbill there. Quite a few sacred ibises, and of course the egret there fishing and looking for some prey, of course. Looking quite peaceful here. It's nice to see these sacred ibises up close for a bit. We don't often actually see them. Occasionally they pop by. But we're going to pop over to Aldonio for a bit. I'm sure we'll probably come back here a bit later. It looks like one-ton has carried on with his daily activities. But there's quite a big bull that's come to drink here. He's and broken the tip of his right tusk. I must say, comparing the habitat here, it's also changed quite a bit. The grass is getting shorter and drying up in a few spots. Quite interesting. Oh no, there's one ton. He's at the back there. Can see a few guests have come to look at them as well. Pan back away from them now. But I'm sure that's a wonderful experience to see a tusker up close like that in person. I remember some of the tuskers that I've seen in person. It is a truly humbling experience to be in the presence of a big majestic tusker like that. Nick, you'd like to know if big tuskers are more aggressive. No, not necessarily. It depends from animal to animal. I just speak out of the viewpoint of the tuskers and the Krugers. So there was a couple that were known for having bad tempers or grumpy personalities, and then there was quite a few that were known for being quite docile. So it does depend from animal to animal, but it's never a golden rule. I would say tuskers probably tend to be a little more relaxed or easygoing. If they're aggressive, they tend to break their tusks on things or in fights, etc. So my assumption would be generally tuskers don't get into too big of fights. Otherwise that ivory would be broken in many conflicts. But yeah, that being said, there was a few tuskers back in the old days in the Kruger that were known for being quite unreasonable. It's nice to see this hammerkop doing its thing around the waterhole here. And then, well, it's my first time actually seeing a hammerkop here at Aldornia. I'm not sure what he's trying to catch. It probably maybe be a few water invertebrates or frogs. I don't think there's a fish inside here. Saw some highlights from some of the cameras. I think it was last night or a night or two ago. There was plenty of lions and a bit of buffalo action here. It's always unfortunate that we don't get to see the lions during the day here, but it is exciting to know they are always close by, so maybe one day we will luck out. It's certainly quite busy and active here at the Aldornia waterhole at the moment. Sean Crook McLaren, you're asking if elephants sleep overnight or during the day. So it's a bit of both. They tend to sleep both during the day and at night, but it's never really for a very long period of time. On average, it's generally about 2 to 4 hours in a 24-hour period. And most of the sleep tends to happen at night, often in short bursts, at which they'll sometimes lie down to enter into a bit more of a deeper sleep. It's not something you often see, and then during the day you tend to see them just dozing while standing in the shade of a tree, and just taking it easy, and essentially their midday siesta, as many people call it. But yeah, I've sometimes seen an elephant or two sleeping, generally more cows or younger animals, and if they feel safe in the area you'll see them sleeping, lying down on the ground. Anyway, I'm going to leave these remaining giraffes to carry on with their day. We're going to hop on over to Stony Point. Well, the penguins are looking quite relaxed on this fine Sunday. Just making the most of the sunshine and basking a bit, and grooming their feathers. I must say I'm quite excited to head to this part of the world later in the year. At long last, see penguins properly since I've become a bird watcher. Looking forward to spending a bit of time in this part of the world. I was going to say I'm pretty sure I can see an Egyptian goose, but I definitely can. I think it's just testament to how adaptive or adaptable they are. It's probably one of the places you would not expect to see a goose, but here they are, and they look quite happy and are doing well. Well, we're going to leave our penguins to carry on. We're going to head on over to Safari Hook. This is quite a nice surprise. So it may look to the untrained eye as a normal everyday zebra, but this is one of the mountain zebra. You can see that bit of a flap of skin on their neck that identifies them as that dewlap as they refer to it. You can also see their stripes look a bit different, but yeah, this is one of your different subspecies of zebra. Quite nice to see them. They are found in this part of Namibia. Very cool to have them at the camera. Of course, the full name for the zebra, if anyone was wondering, is the Hartmann's mountain zebra. Of course, there's not really necessarily mountains in this part of the world, but yeah, that's the name of that zebra species. Very cool to see them. I've seen them once with my own eyes when we did a trip to Etosha. It's amazing how similar they look, but just off that glance they really do look different to your general plain zebra. Oh, there we go. Quite a nice big herd of them. It's nice to see them here. Also those very dark, or their legs in a way almost look completely black, but we can see the stripes there. But their stripe pattern certainly seems very bold. But that flap of skin on their neck is the unique feature one looks for when trying to see which, or if it is the Hartmann's mountain zebra. It's quite a highlight for the day. Quite a nice sighting. Fiona, you'd like to know if zebras have split hooves, and if not, why? So no, zebras have one solid hoof like horses, and that's simply because they're built for speed and endurance. Of course, also you need to kind of split antelopes and zebras or horses apart. They're not the same, so that split hoof-like structure is not a defining characteristic across different types of herbivores. So animals with split hooves are your antelope or cattle, etc., bovine-like animals, and they are normally adapted for softer ground or sharp turning. And your single hoof in a way kind of acts like a strong running shoe. It's much more efficient for long distance travel or fast getaways from predators, but that's a unique adaptation to horses, etc. It's nice that we got to spend some time with these mountain zebra. And you can see they're off on their way to carry on grazing. It's also certainly looking quite dry in that part of the world. But of course, with all the fires, it's also been quite a devastating season in Etosha. But there is quite a fair chunk of grass growth, just not very green at the moment, unfortunately. The mopani trees are looking quite luscious. Raoul, you're asking if the vocals of the zebras are the same. I imagine they are. I don't think there's much of a difference between the various species. I think they all relatively sound quite similar. Might be slight differences, but I don't think it's very noticeable. Anyway, that was a nice treat with the mountain zebra. I'm going to head on over back to Serengeti. Now we have our true Spider-Man. Now I'm not sure if this is the exact same lizard. The rock looks quite similar, so it could be that he's made himself a bit more prominent with his colors. They can change the contrast or the intensity a bit. So more than likely that it's Mr. Spider-Man himself. Well, I see our crime-fighting reptile has disappeared there. It does look like the same rock relatively to me. Also in that general location where we generally see him here at the cam. And he disappeared quite rapidly. I'm sure he hasn't gone too far, but has definitely given us the slip a bit. I see our lizard has reappeared, but we're gonna head on over to Nkoro. Probably come back a bit later. Have a peaceful impala here, taking it easy. You can see how lush the vegetation is in the Kruger region at the moment. It's quite thick and green. This impala seems to be taking it quite peacefully today by the water's edge. See, it's also got a few other members of the herd nearby. And we also have some good old hardy-dar ibises nearby. Tex, you'd like to know if impala really produce one of the loudest vocalizations among antelopes. No, I don't know if it's necessarily the loudest one, but it is a very loud vocalization that they make when the males are rutting. The first time I heard it as a child, I thought it was a pride of lions that were attacking and killing something. Unfortunately, to my surprise and disappointment, it was the impala chasing each other and rutting. But it's an incredibly loud, shocking grunt, I would call it maybe. But yeah, it is spectacularly loud and quite surprising that an animal like that impala is capable of making that noise. And for the vast majority of the time, they're actually quite quiet. Females will grunt a bit and communicate with their young, but for the most part, they're not noisy animals. Then you're asking if these impala are sick. They are not sick, they're just resting and chewing their cud and ruminating their food a bit.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
Would you like to know the difference between a male and a female wildebeest? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live and connect with nature.
Look at this. Wow, that's amazing, everybody. We'll see you there. Oh, have a look at this.
Wow, wow, wow.
I don't know where to look. This is too astounding for words.
Unreal.
This is what they call a shambe, a family, a whole herd of elephants.
Nature is just everything.
We will be extending the show by a few minutes.
A fascinating animal that kind of draws people to it.
We'll see you out on the safari.
Apologies for that, we've just quickly come to Safari Hook. There was a few technicalities on the feed, but looking quite lively and busy here at Safari Hook, so no complaints on that one. It's quite interesting since we're back here at Safari Hook and we can compare apples with apples, but you can quite clearly see the differences with these plain zebra that have come in. They don't look, or maybe they look a bit similar to the Hartman's Mountain zebra, but we can see quite glaringly all the differences that we saw in the Hartman's Mountain zebras here. These plain zebra don't have very noticeable or markingly bold stripes on their legs, and they also don't have that dewlap, so that's how we know it's not the same zebras. But yeah, it's interesting to see the small differences that give it away what type of zebra they are. These weavers are quite noisy at the moment, so making quite a bit of noise in the colony here at the waterhole. Quite a cute looking zebra foal here. Doesn't look too old, still quite young. Looks a little wobbly on its feet. So clearly a newborn, doesn't look super stable. It's not too bad, but it does look a little wobbly there. Still getting to grips with life in the big open world. well, these weavers are certainly advertising themselves to the females in the area. Quite cute watching this little zebra explore its world. See, it seems a bit unused to all these new sensations and things in the big open scary world. I'd certainly say this part of the world definitely needs a bit more rain. It's looking like this before the dry season even starts. It's certainly going to be a bit of a challenging one, but animals are survivors and they will make do. But certainly a tough time ahead if it doesn't start to rain a bit more. Certainly quite a peaceful setting here. Sorry about that. The feed had a bit of an issue there, but we've come back over to Old Donio. Good old reliable Old Donio at that. It's quite nice to see the increased elephant activity. It was quite quiet for a number of months here at Aldorni. We weren't really actually seeing many elephants for a period of time. I think it would be safe to assume that the pans or water sources elsewhere in the bush are maybe starting to dry up a bit, and hence why we're starting to see a bit more of a congregation taking place here. We're going to leave these 3 bulls in exchange for quite a big breeding herd that's come to drink a towel. Let's see what's going on there. While we can see them just moving a bit to the left there, I think we might have unfortunately caught the tail end, but still plenty of elephants to admire. Got a pretty striking scene. Once again, that scale or wide angle view we get here at Tal really can be pretty at times. It puts everything into perspective a little bit. These eddies are moving on so quickly. It would have been nice if they came more to the right hand side so we could see them a bit better. Gareth, you were asking, has there not been much rain there recently? I assume you're referring to more Aldorni or Kenya's part of the world. Now, it's not easy for me to say since I'm not necessarily there in person or up to date with the goings-ons in the area. But just how the bush is looking to me, it tells me that it's been a bit dry. And also the same there at Etosha. That bush also just looks a bit dry for me, considering it's still currently January and very much in the wet season. The bush just looks a little dry to me. So if there was continuous rainfall, we would expect to see the grass still looking quite green. Even here at Tau, you can see it a bit. Oh, it's starting to dry out a bit in the back. For the most part, the last week or so, it's pretty much been the northeastern section of southern Africa that's received a lot of continuous rain. The western areas have been a little bit dry. Even the Cape at the moment has been incredibly dry, hence those fires as well the last while. Of course, this is the natural process for grass to eventually dry out and die. The important thing is, as long as it can grow and reproduce to make more seeds, that is the crucial and important thing. If that does not take place, then you will not be having seeds or new grass to grow in the next wet season. So that's generally the end of the reproductive cycle of grass once it gets to a length in which it has produced its seeds. But obviously, if you've got quite a prolonged or an incredibly wet season, you'll have new generations appearing within that period. So you'll have a lot of overlapping generations of grass, which obviously also then means there'll be even more seeds for the next season that comes along, and build up that seed bank quite convincingly. You can see a few wildebeest and zebra also taking it quite easy here. Definitely a time of plenty with all the grazing at their disposal. For a second, I'm pretty sure I saw a shell duck, and I don't mean an Egyptian goose, considering they're the same family, but it looked like your southern African shell duck. Quite a pretty looking water bird. I see just above the zebra we've got a black-headed heron also maneuvering in the grass there. All I see now is an Egyptian goose. I wonder if my eyes maybe betrayed me, but I'm quite convinced I saw that specific colour of the shell duck. Maybe if we're lucky it will come into screen, but also not unlikely that it was maybe a Egyptian goose after all. So Philip Steele, you're asking what are the types of antelope that we can see. So currently at Taal we have wildebeest. I did see a waterbuck, I think it was just a bull on its own grazing earlier. And then of course the herd of zebra here. Zebra not being an antelope, that's why I left them for last. But yeah, predominantly at the moment there's the herd of wildebeest and a few waterbucks scattered around. Occasionally we also see kurus, impala, and also a springbok sometimes come past here. We've got a close-up of a knobbed duck here. It's quite nice. This is a male with his very impressive knob on his beak there. Unfortunately he's just tucked his head away. For a second we could see his magnificent knob on his beak, but now he's having a nap again. Maybe we'll see it. And it appears that wildebeest gave him a bit of a fright. Obviously decided this is a safer spot to have a drink, considering the presence of the crocodiles at Taal. These wildebeest are certainly making the most of the grazing. They are just chomping away. Lean, green, vegetable eating machines. But of course the grazing is probably quite great at the moment. They really do look like lawnmowers as they just put their head down and graze away. But they are incredibly well designed for that lifestyle. Well, we're going to leave our grazing wildebeest to carry on with their peaceful Sunday, and we're going to head over to Zimbabwe for a bit. Ah, there we go. Our breeding herd has returned. That's quite a nice surprise. I just took the detour. I was thinking they were going to stop there for a second. They seem to be passing right by. I don't exactly know what their plans are today, but anyway. Quite cool. We've got some hartebeest that are also coming in at the back a little bit, so that's quite nice to see. It's one of the antelopes you also don't see too often on the cameras. So that's a nice little different surprise. All four of them, quite a small little herd, but very nice to see. It's quite a weird looking antelope, but they are very cool. I wonder where these hartebeest were lurking earlier and we didn't really see them. I see another calf has come into frame now. And there's clearly a few more lurking nearby. but it does unfortunately seem like they're on their way out, away from the water. But nonetheless, nice to see them. Dex, you'd like to know if, oh no, you're asking why do both male and females have horns? Yeah, it's quite an interesting phenomenon because it's not necessarily always through the bank the same with all antelope species. So, for example, your kudus, impalas, bushbuck and nyalas, only the males have horns and the females don't. But then when you pop along to the wildebeest and hartebeest, for example, I think gazelle also to a lesser extent, males and females have horns, so it's a bit of a strange one. I'd say it's maybe a bit of an evolution. Obviously having horns is always a great way to defend yourself. You can see though when it comes to females having horns, their horns are definitely not as big or large as a male's or as well developed, but it's certainly an interesting phenomenon. Paul, you'd like to know how do hartebeest adapt their grazing in dry seasons? So that being said, the hartebeest is quite a dry area specialist. We tend to only find them in areas where it's quite dry. That's why you don't really, well, in the Kruger you get the Liechtenstein's hartebeest, but quite a few in number. But so hartebeest tend to cope with, and I think it goes for a number of animals that graze. Aside from your wildebeest and zebras, of course, that are bulk grazers. But they cope with the dry season by being quite flexible. So when the grass dries out, they'll switch from your short, lush grass to taller, tougher, more fibrous grasses that tend to grow around trees, etc. So they start becoming quite selective, and your other grazers tend to avoid this. So that's how they exploit that niche that's available. Oh, I see our breeding herd's done a U-turn and come past again. They have been all over the show. It's nice that we've finally been able to get a bit of a look at this breeding herd. They've been playing hide and seek with us for the last bit, but they finally showed themselves, although it does look like they're on quite a mission to get somewhere. So they're done playing around at the waterhole. You can certainly see some of these cows look a bit aware. They seem to be really sniffing around or looking around. I don't know if there's a bull in the herd there trailing alongside. Doesn't look like a bull. I think it's just quite a large cow. It's always interesting to see how a few of them coat themselves differently in mud. Some are a bit redder today and others are a bit more grey. I see the zebras are also running all over the show, but these elephants are certainly in quite a rush to get somewhere. Don't know what's got them going, but they are not mucking around. Looks like they've stopped a bit to assess a bit what's going on, or maybe communicating a bit, stopping and listening. But it does seem like they've paused their very purposeful march. And it's interesting because it doesn't seem like they're really feeding. It does make me think they are just listening and seeing what's going on a bit. It does look like they've settled down a little bit.
Hello, I'm James Henry, and I'd like to take you on a very different kind of safari through the wild heart of Madagascar. In Undersiebe, we'll track the Indri's eerie call through misty rainforest. Then it's east on to Masuala, where lemurs leap through the jungle, coral reefs glow beneath the waves, and adventure waits around every bend. Come, let's explore it together.
My full name is Cedric Leslie Dold. The best driver at Wild Earth, it is me. I believe I'm the best driver. I think so, because I've... best part of my job, I say, is just to try and look out for these animals, track them down. I love tracking animals. I love looking for, fresh tracks, and if you can find them, it's just at the moment of accomplishment. If I wasn't a presenter for Wild Earth, I would be the drummer for AC/DC.
Look at this. Wow, that's amazing, everybody.
We'll see you there.
Oh, have a look at this.
Wow, wow, wow.
I don't know where to look. This is too astounding for words.
Unreal. This is what they call a shambe, a family, a whole herd of elephants.
Nature is just everything.
We will be extending the show by a few minutes.
A fascinating animal that kind of draws people to it.
We'll see you out on the safari.
It seems like the one smaller calf's been left behind. Now he's rushing to catch up. Oh, a bit of revenge there. Storming along to reignite the attack. Quite a busy herd of elephants. You can see the adults are a lot more concerned with getting in enough nutrition and food this afternoon. There's no time for play. It does look like they're mainly focusing on grazing at the moment. Of course, this is a good time of year when grass is incredibly nutritious, so they will shift their diet to be more grazing focused at this time of year with the availability of grass. Anyway, it was a nice treat with these elephants. We're going to go over to Founders for a bit. Oh, rhino are just sneaking around. They were here just before we got here. But they're just being quite sneaky at the moment. It's quite funny, normally the rhinos are quite visible, or they are quite obliging with their presence here at Founders. Today they've really played hard to get a bit with us. I'm not sure why they're hiding from us so much. Well, I think while the rhinos play hard to get, we're gonna head on over to Aldonio. Maybe they'll be a bit more accommodating later. Well, the show continues at Aldonio. Elephants as always, and ever reliable giraffe keeping watch. I see our hammerkop is also still here. Quite a peaceful afternoon. Here comes another giraffe. Ever waiting for the opportunity to have a drink once the elephants move off a little bit. There's quite a few giraffe all over the place here at Baltonio. Looks like little towers popping out of the bush everywhere you look. So there was a question that came in, that was a while ago, but asking if there's a correlation between horn size and testosterone from Taxi Lady. So it's quite interesting and intricate. The initial assumption is obviously testosterone will play a big role in horn growth, and it's easily assumed that's the case. But so yeah, there is a connection between testosterone and horn growth or antler development. Keeping in mind, antlers and horns are not really the same. They are two different things, but it does depend on the animal. So in your species like deer, where the males grow and shed antlers every year, testosterone is very crucial for that growth and plays a big role. So the rising hormone levels trigger the antler growth as they go into their rut, etc., and go into breeding. Your animals with true horns, like your antelope or cattle, the link is somewhat weaker or not so linked, because the horns grow throughout their life. It's not in specific moments, and the horn growth tends to be influenced by a number of other factors such as genetics, age, nutrition, and overall health, rather than just testosterone on its own. So yeah, gets quite intricate. But yeah, your males usually have larger horns because of the hormones like testosterone, etc. But high testosterone won't automatically mean bigger horns. There's a lot of other factors that come into play. I know, for example, some animals, if they're castrated by abnormal factors, predators, hyenas, etc., those males are known for having bigger horns, and it's quite interesting because there's a lack of testosterone in their body due to not having their testicles. So it's quite an intricate and interesting matter. Yaku, again, another question from you. You're asking, why does it look like they are wearing socks? So the species of giraffe that we get here in Kenya, and that's one of the unique features of the species. They've got quite more white legs compared to the southern African giraffe. So in a way, yeah, many people do refer to them as essentially having socks, etc. It's quite funny, especially, I mean, of course, that little section by their hooves obviously sticks out quite a bit, but in general, their entire leg has got a whole lot less markings. Well, I'm gonna leave our ever peaceful giraffe and head on over back to Tal. We've got a bit of a birding session to enjoy. I feel so much better, and I know I'm not crazy because this is exactly what I saw earlier. This is our shell duck having a bit of a swim, so I'm very excited to see one of them. They are very pretty water birds, or ducks if you want to call them that. This is a nice close-up, and I think this is the female if I'm not mistaken. such a cool bird to see. Yeah, this is definitely the female. I just double checked on my field guide. The male has a completely grey head. What's quite interesting with the shell ducks is that they nest underground, so they'll make use of aardvark burrows, and sometimes porcupine or warthog holes will also be used. But it's amazing to think a bird like this uses an aardvark burrow underground to nest. It's not something you would necessarily expect. I think what's quite unique or interesting to witness is actually seeing one of them enter or exit the burrow. I think that's the last thing you would expect to see out in the bush, especially for a bird that is reliant on water, etc. But quite interesting. Generally the nests tend to be about, or can be up to about 2 k's away from water, but nonetheless very, very interesting adaptation. Also quite a cute little zebra foal or two here, running after their mothers. Looking very muddy there at the moment though. Quite a muddy situation. Always the risk of getting stuck, but luckily they're not wading in too deeply. Ooh, bit of a fight going on here between the zebras. Zebras do get quite aggressive with one another, and it's not unusual for kicks and bites to happen in every direction. I don't know what's necessarily caused this. It actually seems to be the mares being aggressive to one another. It's not always necessarily the stallions. But I definitely would not want to ever be bitten by a zebra. I think that's quite painful. Sorry about that, a few feed issues, but we've come over here to the Kalahari salt pan. It's quite interesting to see a vulture perched in a palm tree. I don't think I've seen that too often myself. It appears to be a white-backed vulture. It shows you how strong that palm is to handle the weight of that bird. Not exactly the most stable of things to roost on, I don't think. quite pretty here. Super Mongoose, you were asking if there's any other birds that will nest underground. So many of your kingfishers tend to nest underground. That is their preferred place. So pygmy kingfishers, I think quite a few of your kingfishers in general prefer to nest underground, if not all of them. Your bee eaters will do the same. Honey guides will. I must just double check myself on that one. I'm pretty sure honey guides parasitize some of the kingfishers. I must double check. Yeah, no, I was right on that one. Your greater honey guide will parasitize kingfishers and bee eaters, and since they nest in holes in the ground, that also puts them in that category. Quite interesting nonetheless. Oh, this vulture looks quite happy with itself on its perch up there. You can also see a few other birds going in and out of there. They're just collecting nesting materials. I thought it was maybe a red-billed buffalo weaver for a second, but I could not see it too well. Of course, this time of year is not necessarily the best time to be a vulture. There's not too many animals dying of starvation or thirst. It's a time of plenty for the herbivores. But of course there's always things being killed by predators. But of course the time of plenty for a vulture is more in the dry season. So, just the cycles of the African bush. Quite interesting seeing these fruits of the Ilala palm tree. It's an indigenous palm to southern Africa, or palm tree. But yeah, they look soft, but those fruits are actually incredibly tough and hardy. I'm not sure if I can see a few birds moving in there. Yeah, there we go, there's a red-billed buffalo weaver. But yeah, these alala palms are quite interesting trees of southern Africa. Don't see them everywhere. Some people often think they're introduced, but they are indigenous to southern Africa. You can see the water's been, or the rainfall, sorry, has been quite prolific here in this part of the world. Even the water trough is actually completely submerged, so there's been quite a fair amount of rain here for it to pool around like this. It's looking quite pretty at the moment. It's always just striking for me how these dry areas specifically, I think we see it a lot in Botswana, how the environment just completely transforms in the middle of the dry season, how barren and empty it looks to this time of year with rainfall, etc. Just everything comes to life. It really looks beautiful. This is quite funny seeing the water trough underwater like that. I wanted to assume it's either rained a lot or someone forgot to turn off the water trough and it's filled up the whole area, but I'm sure in this case it's due to prolific rainfall. A lot of beautiful fluffy clouds in the back there as well. But this is certainly one of those examples of why your game viewing is always a bit more challenging during the wet season. In the dry season, this waterhole is full of grazers and animals coming to drink due to it being the only surface water for miles around, whereas now there's plenty of surface water all over the show. So yeah, the game viewing is certainly quite a bit tougher during the wet season. Not just out of the perspective that the vegetation is thicker. Anyway, we're gonna leave our vulture here and go on over to Aldonyo. Plenty of elephants. It's always quite interesting seeing all the tusk structures and shapes here at Aldonyo.
Step into the exciting world of the original science. Next September, Master Tracker Renus Mhlongo and Wild Earth Steve Falconbridge lead a spectacular safari through the Kruger, where you'll learn to identify tracks and then trail iconic big game on foot. Days are spent immersed in the field, evenings around the fire sharing stories, from the hair-raising to the hilarious. This is the ultimate wild immersion for the nature connoisseur.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Oh. This is action-packed.
I get to wake up every morning and go out there and look for cats. I get to create my everyday safari for myself. Myself, I grew up in the sort of central eastern suburbs of Johannesburg, fully qualified trails guide and a fully qualified nature conservationist. I love the wild places. I love being in the wilderness. It's probably one of the best jobs I've ever had and probably ever could have.
Look at this. Wow, that's amazing, everybody.
We'll see you there.
Oh, have a look at this.
Wow, wow, wow.
I don't know where to look. This is too astounding for words.
Unreal. This is what they call a shambi, a family, a whole herd of elephants.
Nature is just everything.
We will be extending the show by a few minutes.
A fascinating animal that kind of draws people to it.
We'll see you out on the safari.
Well, I would essentially say he is technically basically a tusker. See, this younger bull is waiting for the bigger, more dominant bulls to move over a bit so that he could get to the water inlet. He's just patiently biding his time. Now that they've moved off, he can have a bit of fresh water to drink. Well, doesn't seem like he was actually that thirsty. It seems like he's also going to continue shortly onwards. I'm sure he's about to find a shady spot to rest under for the last bit of the midday heat before they start feeding again later this afternoon. Well, we're going to go to Lentor for the last bit of the show. Got some baboons busy with their monkey business. Quite a fantastic way to end off the show. My thanks again to everyone who joined. It's been an interesting session. This little baboon is incredibly cute. Clearly still very newborn and young. Quite wobbly and cute. But once again, thanks to everyone for joining. It's been a great show. I managed to see quite a few interesting things today. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next time. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead and enjoy the drive this afternoon.
you.